Hello! It has been a scorcher of a month, which means that I have somehow managed to read all these books, 9 of them, in fact. So a bit more than I'd actually thought I'd read. I'll be honest. I thought I had struggled a little bit with the heat, but I have clearly been able to not do very much else. So reading is what I have escaped into this month. There's 9 of them, so let's just get on with them because nobody's got time for an hour and a half of this. I'm going to start with How Queer Bookshops Changed the World by A.J. West. Now, I was actually partway through this at the beginning of June, sorry. And so I hadn't, I'd read bits of it. But when I say I'd read bits of it, I'd listened to it because I've been listening to this one on audiobook. I haven't really been very good at audiobooks. I've just struggled all the time just to maintain concentration. And so this is actually one of my first times seeing it in person, like properly, like having a proper look. And it's a really nice cover. But AJ West, you may know, is a friend of the bookshop. He is the man behind The Spirit Engineer and The Betrayal of Thomas True. He's got a new one coming out called The Deadly Inheritance of Everest MacDonald. That's coming out in October. We're going to do an event. You can get signed and dedicated copies by AJ himself. So if you head to the website, you can get those ready now. This one is non-fiction though, his first non-fiction title, and it is about how queer bookshops changed the world. And do you know what they really did? This was a really fascinating look into bookshops that I knew, bookshops that I didn't. And I think I'm going to talk slightly about audio for a second, because I think if you have tried audiobooks in the past and you've not got on with them very well, like I have, then maybe non-fiction is the right way to go. This one particularly worked for me because AJ read it himself and I know his voice. So it didn't feel like I felt like I was on the phone to him. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and it was really, like, some of the stuff I knew, some of the stuff I didn't. And AJ presents it in a really interesting way, and it kind of goes through the history of queer bookshops. And it starts by saying, what is a queer bookshop? How do we know what a queer bookshop is? Which is an interesting idea, because actually some of the earliest ones weren't proper bookshops, maybe, as we would know them now. Some of them sold stuff that wasn't really queer as we would know it now. And yeah, it's fascinating stuff. I think my favourite bit in it was the talk of the what was Shakespeare and Company, which it was obviously in France in 1919 to 1941. It's one of the earlier bits, actually, but it's the bit that's sort of stayed with me. And it was about how the woman who was running it, who I forget her name actually, so I'm just having a look now to see. Sylvia Beach, I think, was the woman in question. And she set up Shakespeare and Company, and she sold lots of stuff, including Ulysses by James Joyce, which she helped publish. He then buggered off to US and got a proper publishing deal and left her far behind. But what was really interesting is that she opened it during the war. Well, it was opened during the war when the Nazis were burning books, especially things like queer books. And after she closed it in 1941, she literally just closed up and ran away. There's another man who had a bookshop in Paris, and he renamed his bookshop Shakespeare and Co. in tribute. And that is the bookshop that we still see in Paris today. So lots of little bits like that, all in here. Some of it is stuff you might know, like things like Gaze the Word and their involvement in the mining strikes in the 80s. Made famous in the film Pride, but that's in here. Have a look at that. But there's also loads of other really interesting stories, fascinating characters, and cats. This is How Queer Bookshops Changed the World by AJ West. It is available now, both in physical format and in audiobook, if you want to hear AJ read it to you. Next, I am going to talk about the names. Now, this is not my first time reading the names. I was actually, again, a bit like the AJ West, I was reading this at the turn of June as we went into the month. I was rereading it in time for our general fiction book club, which we'd chosen the names, and it'd been a while since I read it. The Names is one of our best-selling books right now, constantly on the pillar of popularity, as you will know. It is about a woman named Cora who has to decide what to name her son, and it splits into 3 different timelines. One is, she calls him Julian, which is the name that she always wanted to give him. It's a bit of a compromise because it means like father, sky father, or something like that. So it's still honouring her husband. However, he wanted to call the child Gordon after himself and after his father. So this would be Gordon III. And then on the way to get the child registered, Cora talks to her little girl, her daughter, whose name has just completely forgotten. And I think Maya, yes. And she's talking to Maya about it. And Maya says, oh, well, that's, she sort of tells Cora there's a lot of responsibility in naming a child. She's 8 or 9. And Cora goes, yeah, there is. What would you call him? And Maya comes up with Bear. So it then splits into 3 different timelines. One in which he's called Bear, one in which he's called Gordon, one in which he's called Julian. Now, as much as this is about the names and saying how a name can influence how a person grows up, it's kind of just the triggering factor. And what happens when she gets home after naming him is really where things differ for this child. When she calls him Gordon, the father just goes, lovely, good, that's what we're expecting. And then they stay married for years. Maya moves away. Gordon grows up to be not very nice. He's grown up under the influence of his father. In another timeline, she calls him Julian. And she knows that by calling him Julian, her husband is going to just take off. And so she makes sure Maya is out of the house. She sends her over to her friends for a sleepover. And an argument entails, and so loud is this argument that one of the neighbours comes round and he gets into a fight with Gordon and ends up being pushed through a pair of French doors, dies. The third timeline, Cora doesn't consider that he might kick off because it's not her, it's Maya's name, Bear. And so Maya is at home and he sort of refrains from kicking off a bit. He's still not happy, but refrains from kicking off. And that timeline progresses in a slightly different way to the other 2. So then we follow both Gordon and Maya, Gordon, Julian, and Bear across all these 3 different timelines. And it's not really a book about names. It's a book about the impact of domestic violence and the way in which it can influence somebody's life or a group of people's lives. And so this would have worked potentially as 3 different stories, just 3 little short stories, 3 different little boys, all with an abusive father, all having different sort of outcomes to it. But what we get is a really gorgeously written book about how things change for these characters. And on the reread, I think I invested more in Maya than I had previously. And actually her story is particularly heartbreaking in some and frustrating in others as she can see what's happening to her mum and just can't do anything about it. If you've not read it before, do check out The Names by Florence Knapp. It is a beautiful book. It's my favourite book of last year when I read it last year, and I've really enjoyed rereading it. So if you have read it before, maybe give it a reread and see if there's something else that you get out of it. Now, in no particular order, some of these books, to be honest. This is The Lost Women by Tim Weaver. The reason it's no particular order, I can't really remember the order in which I read them. We had Tim Weaver in the shop for an event, along with MJ Arledge there, and he was talking about The Lost Women, which is the latest book in the David Raker series. Now, he specialises in finding missing people, and he cold cases normally. But he's brought in on a very warm case. In fact, it's happening now. It hasn't even been to the police. Basically, this famous actress, her husband, who nobody knows that she's married to, by the way, has gone missing. And David's like, oh, okay, what's happened? Where was he taken from? And that's things they don't really know, because he went in for surgery on his face. He'd been in a car accident, damaged his face. So he went in for some surgery, and he was wheeled in, operated on, bandaged up, and wheeled out. And then she goes up to see him, and they take the bandages off, and it is not her husband. So at some point between him coming off the operating table and his bandages being undone, he's been taken. Now, he hasn't been replaced. This is another patient from the hospital who was also operated on. But his room, where he's supposed to be, is empty. So the husband is missing. What follows is a sort of tense countdown. David's got 48 hours to find him, and it's all tied up, all becomes tied up with this case from many, many years ago that involves this sort of island off the coast of Cornwall, which just gets besieged by sand. So you can't settle there. People have tried to settle there, and this sand just takes over the island, almost like waves. And these three women went there to record a documentary. One of the women was the sister of somebody who went missing years before. And so you kind of got a mystery wrapped in a mystery here. And they're kind of trying to find out what happened to him. Then they go missing and the bodies are never found. And it is, because presumably they are dead. Then, yeah, this is the story of what happens to David as he tries to find this missing man. It's very tense. It's got that sort of paciness of a thriller, and yet it's also got some depth to it. I've read some Tim Weavers before. I've read some of the David Rakers before. I haven't read them all, but this is the sort of one that makes me want to go back and read more of them, because this was brilliant. I loved it. It's called The Lost Women by Tim Weaver. Okay, let's talk about MJ Arledge. As I have just mentioned him, we had him in for an event with Tim Weaver, and he spoke about Out of the Ashes, which is the latest Helen Grace instalment. I think it's like the 8th or 9th. No, it is the 5th, the 14th, something like that. It's quite a lot. And this one's kind of a sequel to the previous one, which is called Into the Fire. So Into the Fire, Out of the Ashes. That kind of makes sense. And we find Helen, before I say any more, actually, I haven't read Into the Fire. This is perfectly readable on its own if you haven't read it. So although it's a sequel, it's been done in a very, very clever way in that you can still read it, having not read the previous. So it finds Helen Grace basically getting off the ferry at Rotterdam on her little motorbike and going into the city. And she is there to seek the man who basically stabbed her partner, Charlie Brooks, who is now in a coma, watched over by her husband, 2 kids left at home, and Helen is furious. So she's out to find this man. She's got the help of the police there in Rotterdam, and she has to adapt to this new sort of location. She's not been there before. She's a police officer, but she's not a police officer there, so she doesn't really have any authority. She clashes with the Hoofen. I can't say it. It's a silly name. I mean, it's not silly. It's Dutch, but it sounds like it's Hoofen detective or something. Very odd. And so Grace then just has to try and find out what's going on, and there's a couple of sort of other characters who are involved, and we follow their perspective, and it all builds and builds and builds. This one is thrilling. Thrill a minute. Did you know MJ Arledge has previously worked on TV series such as Silent Witness and EastEnders? And it shows, because this one just barrels through. It just is full on plot, and it was so much fun to read that like you just reading it and turning the page, turning the page, turning the page, turning the page. You've got to find out what happens next. Another one that I loved, a really good one from MJ Arledge. It's called Out of the Ashes. Laura Clark is away from her desk. This one is by Helen Russell, and it's the only book this month that I have read that isn't out yet. Because I've been reading for events. I've read 6 books this month, all for events, which we'll get to more of those shortly. 4 books for events, sorry, not 6. Let's talk about Laura Clark, though. She is fed up and walks out of her life, just gone. And we don't see her, we never meet her. We see the people left behind, her daughter, her husband, her colleagues, her best friend, her mum. And we are painted this picture of who Laura was to each of them. And honestly, they're all pathetic. I mean, particularly the husband, I think, he's the type, he's golf obsessed, he goes off and has an affair. I feel like all of the other people who've maybe neglected Laura a little bit have a bit of an excuse in that her daughter is her teenage daughter. She's supposed to be self-obsessed. That's what kids do. Her best friend is like 40 something and just suddenly finding herself the mother of twins, a single mother. Again, like, she's leaning on Laura, but that's what friends are for. You know, in those moments, that's what a good friend is supposed to be there for. Her mother is like Victoria Wood. We only ever really, well, no, actually that's a lie. We do meet her several times, but her best bits are on the voice messages that she leaves for Laura. And they just go off on these tangents, and you can just imagine like either Victoria Wood or Patricia Routledge in the Kitty monologues just going at it. And she does this whole bit like, oh, well, I was talking to Sue, and Sue told me this, and her daughter did this, and da 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 blah blah. Anyway, you remember Sue? She blah 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 blah. Anyway, Sue's dead, and like that comes 10 minutes in, and it's just hilarious. I really enjoyed it. I think that I don't think Laura comes across as all that sympathetic, even though we never meet her, because she gets up and walks out of her life, and she's not got the worst life. I mean, people do take advantage of her. She's got the worst husband, I will give her that. But like, the people at work are all out for themselves. I think that's it. I think maybe Laura just needs to be out for herself a bit more. Like, this is quite a dramatic way of doing it. But it was fun, and I actually quite liked her colleagues who have to try and adapt without her, and like, actually some of them flourish without her because they're forced to do stuff, they're forced to get involved. And I think previously Laura would say that she's always done everything, she always has to, like, it's left to her, she'll do it. She's one of those people, and I think I can be one of those people sometimes, that sees something that needs doing and just gets on and does it, and then complains that nobody else ever does anything. Well, Ian, her colleague, does stuff. He does it too late, probably, because Laura isn't there, and he's expecting Laura to have done it, but then she's not there, so he has to find a way to do it. And it's a good lesson to the Lauras of this world. Sometimes something needs doing, just leave it, and somebody else will pick it up. And they might not do as good a job, but it will get done, and maybe you'll save yourself a shred of sanity. This is Laura Clark is Away from Her Desk. It's by Helen Russell. Really, really good. I enjoyed it a lot. It's out at the very end of July, and you can pre-order it now. Roman Mornings by Maxon Taylor. This is my proof copy, but it has just come out this last week. This I wanted to read because Mattson Taylor wrote The Miseducation of Evie Epworth, which I haven't read, but he's come in the shop and he's signed copies for us, and he's a really lovely guy. And then his next one came out, and it was a sequel to Evie Epworth, so I didn't get a chance to read that. And then this proof came up, and I thought, do you know what? This looks quite different to Evie Epworth. It's different. It's not a sequel. I'm going to give it a go. And it's set in Italy, and you do know that I love a bit of Italy. This one is Rome, and it's about a young woman, Clem. I say young woman, Clem. She's young at the very start in the prologue, and she is heading home in London, and she's sort of thinking about life and what she wants to do, and she eyes lock with this woman in a sidecar on a motorbike, and she feels like there's a moment. And then we fast forward like 20 odd years, and she's in Rome. She's living there with a woman named Floss, an older lady named Floss, and Floss has just bought her Vespa. And so she gets on the Vespa, she drives around the streets of Rome and knocks straight into Monty, who goes flying and hurts his arm. He's there working as a builder, and his boss is very unsympathetic and says, right, well, that's a shame about your arm. You can't work, so I can't pay for you to stay here anymore. You have to go home. And Floss and Clem say, no, you've got to come and stay with us until you're better. And so he does. And then he enjoys it. He keeps talking about having to go home, but like home, there's nothing there for him. And he keeps talking about it. And then they're like, no, you must stay. And they keep finding these reasons for him to stay. And what you end up with is a really lovely sort of communal, sort of found family thing in the 70s in Rome. In many ways, it reminded me of Still Life by Sarah Winman, which is set in Florence, but equally has that sort of found family aspect to it. And I loved that, and I really enjoyed this as well. It sort of brought back those memories. It made me feel like I knew the area, even though I didn't. And it's just a funny, it's funny. I would say it's very different. So Still Life is very touching. This is not as touching, but is very, very funny in a way that Still Life wasn't funny. So two different things approaching a similar sort of plot. And I thought it was great. It's by Mattson Taylor. It's called Roman Mornings, and you can order it right now at bertsbooks.co.uk. Next up, The Shadow Step. This has just come out. This is the third book in the Detective Miller series by Mark Billingham. Mark came into the shop alongside Abir Mukherjee there we go, that's him, to talk about his latest book. And honestly, it was the funniest night. Mark has got such a brilliant sense of humour, which makes sense when you learn that he used to be a stand-up comedian. And what is brilliant about this is that the Miller he's grieving. If you know the series, he's grieving his dead wife. Every detective has got to have some sort of sob story. The thing is, the way he grieves is by telling lots and lots of jokes. He just tells lots of jokes, and it is funny. As I said to Mark at the event, they're a little bit uncle jokes, like dad jokes, sort of. There's the jokes that your uncle might tell you when you're at Christmas Day. I don't know how well Mark took that, but it was meant as a compliment. But sometimes, they become a bit grating. This, though, is a brilliant story. It's a slightly fresher take on the detective story, and I know Mark would say it's lighter than some of the Tom Thorne ones that he's written. Like the MJ Arledge ones and the David Raker one, the Tim Weaver ones, you don't have to have read the previous ones to read this. It does refer to the events of the second book in which he finds out who killed his wife, but he never names that person. So although I now, having read this and not having read the second book, know that he finds out who killed his wife in the second book, I still don't know who it is, so I could go back and read that. I read the first one, I read the third one, because why not? And it all kind of came flooding back 3 or 4 years later. These characters, they're so well written. There's some nice sort of community, I say community, the community of Miller in these people around him, police officers that he works with, and these women, these men and women that he goes dancing with, and even some of the gangsters that he knows. This was a fun read. I enjoyed it a lot, and it has made me want to go back and read book 2. So he must be doing something right. That's The Shadow Step by Mark Billingham. Nearly at the end now. This one, in fact, let's say we're nearly at the pinnacle, because this is the pinnacle. This is the pinnacle by Abir Mukherjee. He came into the shop alongside Mark Billingham and was talking about this. Also a very funny man. This was, or is, a standalone book set in India, in Mumbai, and the Pinnacle is a residential building, 2 towers, and you've got this Hollywood superstar living there, George, who is a kind of a fading star. He's sort of not really been doing much apart from these whiskey adverts. He's married to a woman named Sweetie, who's this big star in Bollywood, and so it's kind of like all about her career at the moment. And they have a bit of an argument. He goes out, gets drunk, comes home, sleeps on the sofa, wakes up in the morning and finds that she has been stabbed to death in their bedroom. Yeah. So then he's got to find out what happened. And he's implicated because he's the husband, always is the husband. Their PA, Gemma, we find out from her point of view, she's being blackmailed about something. She didn't kill her, but she's got her own problems. And then there's Amit, who is George's PA, and he's gone on the run. Why is he on the run? Does he have something to do with Sweetie's death? This is a thriller-minute Pinnacle book, and you sort of race through it and needing to know what's going to happen. Very much a who did this, why did they do it? Are they gonna get caught out? And there's 3 protagonists here, and all of them are a bit dodgy, but you kind of grow to like them all. And you start to worry, oh, okay, are all 3 of these going to make it out okay? Or is somebody going to get into a bit of a sticky situation? It's got some of Abir's humour in it as well. There's a great moment with a little old Indian lady, Miss Singh's mother. I loved that. She was built up to be this sort of... I'll let you read it. It was very, very good. One of my favourite moments. And yeah, I thought it was an excellent book. Again, I don't think I've read much of Abir's books before, so this has made me want to go back and read some of those. But this one is out now. We've got signed copies. It's called The Pinnacle. And last but not least, we are back to Italy. This time we're going to Florence. And I read a lot of books in Florence, so I feel like it's my second home at the moment. And it is the first book of about 6 that feature Cesare Aldo, who is he's a member of the Otto in Florence, which is the sort of police force that looks after the city for the de Medicis. And he is on his way back from accompanying a man named Levi to a different city, and basically Levi is, somebody's out to kill me, I need some protection, you can come with me. So Cesare says, yeah, sure, comes with you, goes back, and I mean, we meet them on the way back, and he says, as they get back into Florence, are you okay now? I should hold that there so that people can see it. Look, there we go. Are you okay now? And he says, yeah, I'm fine. To which Aldo points out, well, if somebody was trying to kill you on the road and they haven't had a chance, maybe they're going to try again whilst you're at home, like they know where you live. Maybe you need some protection. And Levi's like, no, I'll be fine, don't worry, you head off home. So Aldo heads off home, and Levi is murdered. So then the story becomes all about investigating that. There's a sort of a second story involving a young man who has been dressing up as courtesan, and he is murdered. And the two kind of end up entwining. And the thing, we read this for our LGBT book club because, as it says on the back, can Aldo stop the conspiracy before anyone else dies, or will his own secrets destroy him first? His secret is, of course, that he is gay, which in 16th century Florence, maybe not. So he's trying to keep that secret. He's trying to live his life. He's trying to solve these crimes. He's trying to stop the Duke of Florence being murdered. There's a lot going on. It's all set around, I mean, some of it's real. Some of it is real. I thought it was brilliant. I raced through it. One of those books I just didn't want to put down. There's another 5 at the moment, so I will be reading book 2 very, very soon at some point. And yeah, I think if you are a fan of historical fiction, a fan of crime fiction, or just like a little bit of like representation, then try City of Vengeance by D.V. Bishop. It is available right now. There we go. That is all 9 books that I have read in June. Have you read any of them? Are you a fan of any of these particular authors? Do have a look and let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think. Make sure you subscribe as well to the YouTube channel. That way you will find out what I've been reading in July. I am reading a cracker of a book right now. I'm looking forward to going back and reading that. I've got a few more lined up. We've got another couple of events. We've got a few podcast interviews. So I've got a few that I need to read, and then I don't know what I'm going to read after that. So I'm looking forward to investigating my TBR pile and seeing what is coming up in the rest of the year. That's everything. Go and order some books. Go and read some books. Just keep reading.